Well, hello everyone. It's time to cook again. What do you think? It's the middle of summer here now, and something that is very prevalent on every table is tomatoes. So I thought today we'd make something fairly simple that I've never made before, a tomato pie. So let's get started. So I do not make pie crust on my own, I'll admit it. It's been the bane of my existence most of my adult life, so I just buy my pie crust at the store, and I am perfectly happy with that. And all you need to do is just follow the directions on the pie crust box. This particular brand says to let it sit out for 15 minutes to get a little bit warm. Take it out and you unroll it. And there I am, unrolling my pie crust. Then you start fitting it in to your pie plate. I just, if it's a small plate, you'll have a little bit more to fold over. If it's a larger one, this is a deep dish pie plate. So I only have a little bit to fold over to start with. And you want to make sure that it doesn't hang too much over the edge, because those are the parts that will tend to get burned. And then you follow the crimping process. The crimping helps to keep it on the edge of the pie plate and not start to go into the pie. Next, tomatoes. It is a tomato pie after all. The original recipe that you will see at the end of the video says that tomatoes should be sliced. As I was surfing the internet looking at different recipes, I found one recipe that said the tomatoes could be diced. And that's what I decided. I mean, it's a big dice. They're not tiny at all. But I thought it would be a little bit easier to cut the pie when it's finished and to eat it with small pieces of tomato instead of larger slices. So that's what I did. I just diced up in a large dice all my tomatoes. There they are, all ready to go. Then they have to be salted into a pretty generous salt. And since these are diced tomatoes, I decided to give them a little shake with my hands. Next thing in the pie is cheese. I'm sure you could use any combination of cheeses you want. The recipe that you'll see at the end calls for mozzarella and cheddar. I have used Colby Jack and sharp cheddar, and you'll see a little bit of Parmesan at the end. Calls for 1 cup of shredded cheese. I'm shredding my own cheese here. You can also buy cheese that's pre-shredded. It makes it easier, and you don't run the risk of putting a little bit of yourself into the mix. But I have been told and experienced this myself that they put some type of a non-sticking product on pre-shredded cheese, which tends to make it not come together as well. So if I can, I try to shred my own. And here we go with the mayo. Again, the recipe calls for a full cup of mayo. If you're not into that, want to use a little bit less, that's perfectly up to you. Plus, instead of mayo, I'm actually using Miracle Whip. I'm a Miracle Whip kind of girl. That's what I like. So that's what you'll see going into the cheese mixture. But that's, again, your choice. That is the artistic and creative process of cooking. Where possible, you can sometimes substitute one ingredient for another. It's totally up to you. Now, besides the tomatoes and the cheese, there are a couple extra ingredients in the pie. One is onion and the other is basil. Now, I believe the recipe calls for green onion. I didn't have any green onion. I could have gone outside in my garden and used my chive if I wanted to. That would have given it a nice green touch. But I'm also partial to Vidalia onions, and that's what I've used. Now what you can't see here is I'm cutting lengthwise into the onion, and now I'm cutting across to give me a nice small dice. And the recipe does call for a 1/2 cup of diced onion. Whatever you're going to be using, you should end up with about a 1/2 cup. And there we go. Now, the basil that you're going to see is also from my garden. It doesn't look as nice as the basil you may get in from your grocery store, but it is basil. It tastes exactly the same. It just looks a little bit peaked today. You can use as much or as little as you want. You could probably even use a couple shakes of dried basil if you really didn't have basil, or didn't have the opportunity to go and get some fresh basil. I do substitute dry basil for fresh basil in many of my recipes that I make, so I don't think that's an issue at all. This one, it's more of a look than actually a taste change, because the taste is the same, but when you have those nice little pieces, chiffonades of fresh basil, it does give your dish a really nice look. So here we are finishing the dice of the basil. And time to put everything together. The pie crust was pre-baked, so it's ready to go. And the first layer is the tomato. I did squeeze these tomatoes fairly well before I started putting them in to get out as much liquid as possible, because you don't want your pie to have a soggy bottom. Next comes the onion. I don't think I used the full 1/2 cup when I put this together. That would be your choice. It depends on, how oniony you want this to be. I think I used maybe 2/3 of my 1/2 cup of onion. And here comes the little fresh basil. It looks very pretty, and it does, when the pie is finally finished, you'll see little bits of it sticking out through the cheese. It actually makes it look a little bit like pizza, and this is kind of what this tastes like. Here comes the cheese mixture. I'm gonna dollop this on top in a couple different spots. I have 3 different dollops, and just, smoosh it along the outside of the pie until it is ready to go. And here it goes. But there's one more thing. One of the recipes I saw, and this is not again on the recipe at the end, is to add a little bit of dry Parmesan at the end. And that's what I'm going to do. Just put a little handful to finish it off to make it a 3-cheese pie. There it is. And this is the finished product. Doesn't it look scrumptious? And there you are, a lovely light lunch or supper tomato pie. I hope you enjoyed this. I'll see you soon.